Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being the show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Brother's Son, Season 1, Episode 4. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're immediately sitting down. It's kind of gathering. It's Blood Boots and Jing have showed up. Obviously, I forgot to talk about the last episode, but Charles had called. He needs his crew to back him up during this whole situation. So they're kind of like telling stories about Charles and Bruce's dad, about how he had this meeting. It was kind of served over food. More and more food would come out, but his dad wouldn't take a bite because it's kind of seen as, well, it was almost like a sign of weakness, like being the one to eat in front of someone, or maybe it was kind of like a sign of disrespect of not eating. I can't remember what they were saying exactly, but the dealings went okay until someone brought the check, and it's disrespectful to be the person that doesn't pay. So it's a thing of both their dad as well as like the other guy that they were like dealing with, like, hey, let's try and like who's going to pay for the bill, and that turned into a whole thing until Mama Son came in and like squashed that. And Blood Boots, I was about to call him Das Boots, Jesus. Blood Boots, it's like, yeah, nothing compares to a Taiwanese mom. You don't get any tougher than that. No gun in the world is stronger than that. But like a month or so later, their dad ended up wiping him out because it's like, because he ended up being the one that ended up paying, it showed weakness in them. So later on, their dad was just like, right, I know they're weak, so we might as well wipe them out. So it was interesting too, because Charles was like, yeah, he had never heard that story. I guess there's a lot about his mom he doesn't know, because the conversation is that his mom and dad together are what made the triad, the Jade triads, like what they are today. And even Blood Boots, it kind of confirms what I was thinking, that considering how smart she is, that she was the brains of the operation. He was kind of the brawn, she was the brains. But I guess, once again, Charles hasn't been around his mom that long, so he's probably heard stories about his dad. He's probably never heard stories specifically tied to his mom. And like, he knows she's a key part to this, but even he probably doesn't know the legend of who she is. It's like, without her, your dad probably wouldn't be who he is right now. He wouldn't have all he has without her, because that's why she's so important. So I love that Bruce and TK were kind of sent away. It's like, right, we're having grown conversations now. Go over there and kind of sit at the kids' table, even though it's just them sitting at the couch. But like, you're not supposed to be involved in this conversation. Charles wants Bruce to be there because it's like, yeah, like, he's not the greatest, but he can't step up. He's proven that. But once again, their mom doesn't want him involved in all of this. So when it's all said and done, they're still listening in. So it's actually Bruce who ends up coming up with an idea of where they can meet, like have this square, as they call it, which I wonder, is that legitimately what that's supposed to mean, considering like TK's understanding of it, of like, oh yeah, two triangles coming together. I was like, is it really that? Like, I would have never associated that, but I'm like, oh, that is interesting. I mean, it's just the equivalency of the triad parlay, as I was kind of considering it, because I only know parlay because of like Pirates of the Caribbean, like because of that. Like, it's a very pirate, like white flag. Hey, let's no gun, no death or anything, like no fighting until negotiations are done. It's supposed to be that type of meeting, that type of deal. So when it comes to this, Bruce is the one that suggested a spot, and like it's a Korean spot, and you have TK being like, oh, I can hook you up, the boss of the area, like, I'm Korean, so like, these are my people, I can like make it so that you have their blessings to kind of have this whole dealing. And they show up for the dealing, but TK isn't liked. We learn more about his brother, though, that the guy's like, oh yeah, I remember your dumbass brother, before he got arrested for selling stolen air conditioners to an undercover cop. So that's what TK was talking about. I mean, it kind of goes along with what I said, because I was like, oh, like, his brother was kind of a loser. Yeah, he was a criminal, but he was a loser, and so he's kind of seen as a loser, and he wanted to be, once again, better than his brother. So, but it's like, no, his brother had a reputation, and it's also his reputation to share with his brother. It's like, you're both dumbasses, so. But the only reason why they did this, they didn't do this for TK's sake. They did it because they didn't want no beef with either triad. So that, fine, we'll be the parlay spot. We'll kind of give you our blessings for you to kind of have your square here. And I love the back and forth between Drowsy and Charles. And I love the guy being like, oh, do you want to like like suck each other's dicks right now, or you want us to give you room? And Blood Boots is like, yo, you speak English? He was like, you dumb idiot! I grew up in Panoma. Like, what are you talking about, homie? I love that stuff. But yeah, it's like, yeah, I'll be the middle ground. They both kind of contributed like payment to, kind of ease this transition. So, but I love our introduction to Drowsy. He was immediately kind of seen like a pretty boy because Charles keeps referencing someone, was it Ekin Cheng, and I was looking him up. It's like I skimming his filmography. I'm not familiar with him. He's an actor from Hong Kong. It seems like he's probably mainly done Chinese movie. I don't think he's done anything stateside. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of actors and actresses like that are in that same boat with that. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, that doesn't just apply to like China or Taiwan or anywhere. It refers to just internationally. There's just so many actors out there you just would have never heard of. I recently talked about it. There was a Korean actor who recently popped up in. He's on the show Gyeon Creature. He plays Jang. I had talked about it. That actor, I think his first like stateside production was The Marvels. He was Prince Yang, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. But is that type of situation where it's just like it's fascinating with stuff like that. Regardless, I'm going a whole tangent. So, but because I was like, I figured hearing the name, I didn't think I recognized it, and looking that actor up, I was like, oh yeah, I definitely didn't recognize him. So obviously, a lot of that reference went over my head, but I figured it'd be significant. I mean, he's had a pretty long career. Just Ekin Cheng, like he had a very long career as both an actor and a singer. So. But like I said, the whole point was just, I think it's just like, oh, like his hairstyle, but also he's kind of like, he's very kind of vainish in regards, like Drowsy Lee, so. But the problem is, it's supposed to be like, okay, we're setting it up, Mama's son is going to go too, except she was not allowed to go, which it's kind of on some sexist shit where it's just like, it's being, I guess, extremely traditional. That is such a monumentous historic moment, because even Charles had said like there hadn't been something like this in like 20 years, so it will be a monumentous occasion of like getting two big triads sitting down like this. But the problem is they didn't want a woman involved, so even though she is the brains of the operation, even though she's the reason why like their family's triad is where they are for the most part, like she doesn't get any respect, because at the end of the day it's like, oh, it's going to look a certain way. Like women can be involved, they just can't be in the room, they can't be a part of like those conversations. This is kind of like omitted. Like I said, it's on that, like I think it's supposed to be like, it's a little sexist. I'm probably not, it's extremely sexist, but I think it leans into more like it's supposed to be quote unquote more traditional, I guess, in a lot of capacity. So, and they're celebrating, and obviously Mama's son is not too happy about the whole situation. So, and Charles kind of stuck into this rock and a hard place, because yeah, he has to make this happen, but it's also the thing of, once again, Bruce is the one they're bending over backwards for, of like, oh, like, no, you don't go or whatever, you don't worry about any of this, you just go focus on your improv and stuff. And it's like, yeah, everyone's here supporting Bruce. Blood Boots is like, oh, look, can I come to your improv show? And then Zing wants to go because she's like, oh, is it going to be like Hamilton? And she starts rapping something Hamilton. It's like, oh yeah, she's completely obsessed with it. I love it. But yeah, once again, that animosity that Charles has, where it's just like nothing he does is good enough. This is supposed to be, hey, we're going to go out and celebrate, but it's like, no, we're all capitulating to what Bruce needs. Oh, like, yo, his improv show, let's all go. Obviously, Mama son is like, I'm not gonna go. Like, I kind of like, I'm one person. I like things planned out, and something that's by kind of a fly to your seat of your pants is kind of the antithesis of who she is. It's just kind of her complete opposite. So it's like, no. I'm not gonna make. It's just gonna make her too uncomfortable. It is that thing of like, she wants to push Bruce towards all of this, but you can't show up for him. But I think it's also that, once again, it's that mama bear of it all. But I think it's also a little bit of, I'm trying to keep you away from this life. I don't have to necessarily like what you're doing, but I'm going to keep you away from this life. I'll support whatever you need to do or what to do just for the sake of getting you away from this entire life. So it's such an interesting, like I said, conundrum from her part, and just how that just, like I said, you just see that kind of like sowing like a little bit of resentment deeper and deeper into Charles because of it. So they end up going to his thing, because he had invited Grace earlier on, because I love that like Blood Boots was following him around, And because it's like, yeah, he'd even talked about Bruce being in that rock and a hard place, torn between, okay, I should always listen to mom because mom is right. He's like, yes, but your brother's also right. So your mom wants you to be out of this life, but your brother wants you to be involved because it's all about family. And even later on, Charles says he needs someone there. Eventually, if something happens to dad, and even if something doesn't happen to dad now, even if he survives, eventually it's all going to get passed to me. And when it does, I'm going to need people around me who I can trust. I need family. I need my brother, you know? Because if you can't count on family, who can you count on? Because in this world of gangs and triads, like the only people you can trust is family. They're the people you know are ride or die with you through and through. Family in general, because he's got Zing and he's got Blood Boots, and they are like brother and sister to him. But still, like there's a difference between like family and being family versus being blood related. Blood does run deep, and those ties matter the most in the grand scheme of things. So that's kind of where Charles is at. But also, like, him and his brother have been apart for so many years that I think he's kind of gotten to know more and more about his brother, and I think it's something he wants to kind of keep going. And like this, my world, I'm gonna need someone like you by my side, or someone that I know can back me and have my back when the time comes. You might not always be the most reliable, but I know there's something there underneath, because at the end of the day, you are still a son. Whether or not you've been a part of this life, it still runs in your blood. It's in our family. It's in you, regardless of you not being trained up like I was. I even love the whole situation going back where Blood Boots ended up paying off his tuition for like the next 3 months, because like the lady was like, dude, you always late with your paying your tuition. It's going to be late this time, or it's going to be late that time. Like it's just always going to keep happening. But he was also making this excuse. He's like, oh, this is racist, and she's like, dude, I'm Korean. He's like, yes, and you're doing this because of what my people did to Koreans. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. And even Blood Boots is like, we are sorry, and kind of walks away. But yeah, there's the whole Grace situation, her and the Frisbee situation, which, once again, it could just be like, oh, she's really good at Frisbee. I'm like, something suspicious about Grace, dude. I'm like, if that's the case, why get so close to Bruce if she is kind of part of this like Red Ribbon group? I'm just like, there's something that's not gelling with me. With like, it's just I'm super suspicious of her. I hope it doesn't end up being the case, considering like the fact is Bruce does like her, and it does seem like she likes him. It would suck to kind of get betrayed by someone you like the most, which might, interestingly enough, flow down Charles' route with the way this episode ends. But we'll see how that all plays out. But I'm kind of worried, when it's all said and done. Of like, I'm just like, also because like she is so really good at, like, she threw the Frisbee and hit. I'm like, is she actually really really skilled? She might be like presenting herself as kind of like dorky and like kind of like wild, but really like that might be a front. She might be more Charles. She's presenting Bruce, but she might be more Charles. Like, that might be like, just that Frisbee throw and her hitting that sign made me go like, yeah, that might not just be being good at Frisbee. That might be something deeper underlining that just made me go like, are you actually really, really good fighters? Is that what that's kind of insinuating? I don't know. I just don't know what to make of her. Like I said, I've been suspicious of her for like since episode 2, so. She hasn't done anything necessarily to warrant those suspicions, but I'm always looking for that other shoe to drop, because you just, once again, in this world, you just don't know who to trust. But my point, once again, is why go the trouble of getting so close to him if you're not going to like take action with it now? Maybe it's the long game, as this whole everything has been orchestrated to be the long game, so. But either way, they all go to his improv show. Charles kind of got dragged along. Jing's disappointment was there wasn't enough rapping in it. But everyone else had a good time. And Bruce did a really good job. And to the point that he actually gets invited onto the improv team. It's like, oh, we've got this like free show that's coming up. Like tomorrow, we're going to leave super early. It's like a 3-hour drive away. And Bruce is like, yeah, I'm going to go. I'm like, you shouldn't have made that promise, because I know you're going to bail at the end because family stuff is going to come up. And, when it's all said and done, him and his brother do talk, because he's like, oh, like, why does everyone treat mom like she's the queen on the chessboard? She is. But it's like, it's like, do you have, like, you can't keep towing this line. You can't try to be the improv dude while also benefiting and using our money to pay off your tuition and stuff like that. you're so busy trying to, walk in walk with one shoe while having your toes dipped in the other. It's like, that's not how this works. You have to step up. You have to choose who you are. And this stuff, that's not you. This is family. Family needs you, and that's what matters most. So he's not quite sure what to do when it's all said and done. I do like that him and Grace had it, like Bruce and Grace had that moment where it's like, oh, are they going to kiss? At first, I thought she was going to turn him down, being like, oh, no, I didn't want us to be like that. I thought we were just friends. I mean, they were very close dancing and stuff, so I was like, I'm not sure. That's happening really fast, but I wasn't sure where that was going. But it's like, oh, no, I'm leaning in because you've got my, like, eyelid, my fake eyelid, my tape eyelid on your chin. So I was like, oh, cool, like dashing that kind of like sweet moment, because he was also closing his eyes and leaning in. I was like, it was already kind of being awkward, but it's like, yeah, the moment passed, just kind of killed all the momentum of that moment. Like I said, not less that was Grace also playing that moment because she doesn't want to get too close to him. Once again, it's just tinfoil hat moments, when it comes to Grace. Which is also interesting too, because while Charles is kind of chastising Bruce for all that, he's also trying to get close to Alexis. In fact, he tries to call her, leaves a voicemail, she's texting him, and I love that moment where like she's seeing like, okay, he's typing, then he stops. He's typing, then he stops, and then because she's like, oh, am I in your head? And he's like, am I in yours? And he doesn't get a response, but because it's lonely, like he doesn't really have anyone outside of this. At least Bruce has like a life. He has a best bud in TK. It's like, I even love that it's like, oh, which does beg the question, what's going to happen with TK? Because TK was left behind as human collateral, and I love that Charles was able to spin it like, hey man, you're the only one I can count on. It's like, no, he's someone, you're willing to have him as a sacrificial lamb because you don't, because I was thinking like, are you going to use Bruce? But it's like, there's no way you're going to put your brother in that situation. Now TK, yeah, he might be your brother's best friend, but he's expendable. He's kind of, he's not the brightest, he's not the greatest, so it's like, yeah, I'm fine with expending him. Yeah, he can be useful in some capacities, but even my sometimes useful brother, a lot of times not useful, that quote-unquote useful brother of mine is still more useful than TK, but even if he wasn't, he's still my brother, so that kind of takes precedent over you, so poor TK. Like, that's the last time we see TK, and when the way the episode plays out, I'm like, what does that mean for TK in the long run? Because I think the defining factor for Bruce was when he asked Blood Boots, it's like, yo, like, would my dad like me? And it's like, well, it's like, your dad doesn't get too caught up in, like, the past or who you are or what you do. What, at the end of the day, what matters is whether what you do serves him or whether you're someone that gets in the way of what he wants. And in that moment, it's just, and, it's just like that in conjunction with Charles being like, I don't need you to be a gangster. I just need you to be my brother. And so he does show up at the meeting, and it meant a lot for Charles for his brother to be there. It's like, right, like you trust me that I will have your back, that I will protect you. Because even Bruce is like, I don't know if I'm here because I want to be or whether I just don't want to let you down. And he's like, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, you are here, and I'm going to protect you. I want to make sure you're okay. And then he immediately gets snatched up by Sleepy Chan's people because it turns out he's going to be the negotiator. Because I guess they didn't want to trust. They didn't want to trust putting Sleepy Chan and Charles in the same place. I mean, once again, he's chair leg Charles, so his reputation precedes him, so they didn't want to take any chances. Because even his mom made it clear, like, if you find out that Sleepy Chan is responsible, then you know what needs to be done. Basically, wiped him off this planet, and it's like, that's what he was going to do, Because it's like, yeah, this is supposed to be a talk for peace, but if we find out they're responsible, we need to put them down. So, but the problem is, Bruce doesn't know enough Mandarin, so he's only catching every other word. But basically, Sleepy was basically going on this very like philosophical way of saying, hey, I'm not the one that went after your dad. This is a new enemy and an old enemy at the same time. So maybe it's an old enemy that's under new management, whereas like Charles is supposed to be kind of running things now with his dad out of commission. Maybe someone else is like running these red ribbons, like maybe a Grace, like maybe it's because the fact is Sleepy was like, it's an old enemy but new. So either it's like an old group, a triad that maybe they wiped out a long time ago, or at least thought they did, has like risen from the ashes, and maybe that's what this is about. Once again, the whole riddance of evil must be thorough. the reason why they're gunning for you guys is like this might be a revenge story of like maybe we'll find out like let's take Grace for example, if it's her, not saying it is, but once again I'm tinfoil fatted up when it comes to Grace. What if like her father or something was killed by Sleepy or Charles and Bruce's dad? Or what if he was like, what if someone important to her was caught in a crosshair between their war? And so that's what this is all about. Like, this isn't about gaining control. It's about just wiping out these two particular triads. Like, weakening them to the point that, oh, I kill the people I need to kill and dismantle their organizations enough for whoever wants to take over, whether this person has the plans of taking over. But the whole, like, the riddance of evil makes me feel like it's more like a call of a higher purpose. It doesn't seem like someone that's coming in to take over the tribe, but maybe it's like you're going to take over things just so you can destroy everything, because the only way you can destroy it is from the top down type of situation. Or like I said, maybe it's specifically I'm getting revenge against these two particular family and groups, and just I'm going to leave the rest of the festering remains for whatever vultures in the other triads want to come pick apart the bones type of thing. So, but yeah, sadly, Sleepy ends up getting murdered in front of Bruce, so it's definitely not him. So, which I love that whole sequence of Charles tracking down his brother, defending him, Jing's fighting, Blood Boots is fighting, Drowsy and Charles fighting together. It's like, yeah, you also didn't drop the info to him. Yeah, your dad's dead. Like, let's kind of skip over that. I mean, he did say earlier in the episode, oh yeah, I'm sorry what happened to your father. It's kind of sad, like, you couldn't give him the benefit of being like, yeah, oh yeah, your dad's dead. It's like, well, you need him to help you fight, so you're probably not trying to catch him and put him in an emotional situation. It's kind of a moot point later on, sure, but still. It's like he was at least saying sorry about your dad, who's still alive, might not make it, but he's still alive, versus his dad who straight up got murdered, so. Well, maybe I'm misremembering, because isn't Drowsy supposed to be his son? Maybe I'm being stupid, but I could have sworn they were, like, Drowsy's supposed to be his son. Like, didn't they keep saying that? I don't think that's a right-hand man thing. I think that's like, no, that's legitimately his son, so. Because I start second-guessing myself of, like, is that why Charles didn't say anything? Because that's not, but I'm like, no. I distinctly remember him saying that's his son, but like I said, I felt stupid for a moment, like I was forgetting. Like, maybe I was misremembering. But either way. Turns out the last guy they left alive ended up being the guy that Mama's son ran into last episode. He was also the dude pretending to be a cop last episode and this episode. Part of me was almost wondering, could he actually be a cop? But it's like all he needed was a uniform to probably be able to, like, no one's going to, as long as he's walking around in uniform, no one's really going to take much notice of him, and just they're going to assume like, oh, he's another cop. I might not be that familiar with you, but yeah, cops I'm probably not that familiar with, come in and out and all the time. So he was like out and about. So. Because while all this is all going down, Alexis ends up finding like QR codes on some of the red ribbons of these people, and later on she goes to the morgue to talk to the coroner, which she talks about the fact that they have this whole dating situation conversation where it's like, yeah, either the people I go out on a date with have an Indian fetish, or they have much worse, they have a coroner fetish. And so it's like kind of differentiating that and kind of dealing with that in the dating world, which Alexis is like, oh, if someone has an Asian fetish, I let them kind of talk, so you can go ahead immediately get all those red flags out of the way of like, oh, you're only dating me for the purposes of, hey, I'm Asian. That's all you care about. If you're able to kind of nip that in the bud immediately, then it's like, okay, like it saves you a lot of time. Like basically supply the person with the rope and let them hang themselves in a metaphorical conversational manner, not in a literal sense. So... But yeah, which I love that she was like, oh yeah, having this conversation about like, oh, that's so inhumane, as a coroner's like dumping like the fingers off that severed corpse. I was like, that was perfectly done timing wise for that conversation to overlap with said thing. But Alexis was able to open up the phone, but all it is a chat log, and it seems like it's one that probably disappears after a while. It's meant to be like, oh, you leave no traces behind, but because the only way you can access it is through the QR code and the red ribbons. But she didn't make heads or tails of it. Thought that's all it was. She knew something was going down in the case spa, but yeah, that's because it was. Which ultimately, her cop friend does have to listen to her, because he was like, oh, I don't have any evidence. Plus, she got attacked too. So whoever's coming after her in that moment has to be. I mean, it's so interesting too. They decided to send one person, but it's like, right, she's just a DA. She's not some trained like killer or something. Maybe that's why. I mean, they've kind of underestimated situations before. Have only sent one or two people, and that's kind of blown up in their faces. But I guess they didn't want to make too much. I mean, whoever it was, she's got those noodles on her and ended up like smashing him in home dude's face and ended up escaping. And she called up. I think the cop she works with name is Mark. So, but I'm assuming they went after her because of her connection, because she's been seen probably multiple times interacting with Charles, so they kind of threw her in this. But if you scan some of the messages, it seemed like they were referencing not only Charles, but they were also referencing the brother, as in like Bruce. So the mom's probably not going to be too happy about the end result of that for multiple things. One, Bruce being there in the first place, she's not going to be too happy about that. But also the end result. That's what I was actually really sad when Charles ended up getting. I mean, not Charles. When Drowsy got blown up at the end, I was like, oh, that's sad. I was almost hoping you two would be a dynamic duo, especially because it was going to all fall to him to kind of run things. But yeah, like two heads of the Sleepy triad is gone now. So, and Charles got pretty brained up from it. By the time he gets outside, the cops are already arriving. To be fair, they were only going in that place because like I doubt like people nearby knew what was popping off there. It was most likely because Alexis had called Mark about the whole thing, or like called in, probably a favor about that. So Charles is going to get arrested. She's probably going to try and like help him out. Luckily his mom will probably show up or hire a lawyer or something to show up to help like kind of dispense that stuff and kind of get him out of that. But mom's probably not going to be too happy about that. But it's like, right, they were all blindsided, not just the sons, also Sleepy and his crew were like blindsided too. That's why they got murked. So once again, it doesn't help that Bruce didn't get the full translation of what he said, but we did, just because once again, I think that key factor is our enemy is someone new and old. I think he even said their name at the end. What was that like? Because Bruce is like, think he said, "Oh, you saying LOL?" But it's like, what was it, Lau or Lolo or something like that? I believe it was like Lolo or something like that. It was like LOU or something like that. Maybe, I don't, I'm actually messing it up myself, but because I remember, all I can remember is Bruce being like, oh, did you say like LOL? Could you say that again? So it's like, I don't know if that was their name. I'd assume it is, but yeah, quite the unfortunate series of events. Your only suspects ended up not being the people behind it. In fact, the whole thing was a trap to put you both in the same area so you both could be wiped out. Once again, whoever this is playing the long game, because they knew you guys enough to know how you would react in these situations to be able to have set up in place to kind of wipe you out. Once again, I'm also back in my tinfoil hat. It's got to be their dad's right-hand guy. Like, because whoever it is has to have been in the game long enough to know them well enough. So, like I said, I don't know. Like though him and Grace are my two suspects currently. Because it has to be someone we've seen frequent enough that it would make sense. Like, oh, like, even though they don't, like, Home Dude he's only popped up in 2 episodes and he's only been in a little bit of both episodes, he's still enough where it's like, okay, he's around enough that we can like be familiar enough. Typical crime drama thing of narrowing it down of like, oh yeah, like either it's going to be someone that's super famous in the episode that you're aware of, or it's just going to be that person that's kind of who popped up the most in the episode, or maybe the person who ended up popping up the least. Like, that's usually like the middle ground. It's never going to be like someone that came out of nowhere. It's going to be because that's in good storytelling. It's got to be someone you're familiar enough with, someone you don't suspect, but it's going to be someone I suspect. Like I said, I feel I'm leaning towards Grace being more responsible, but I still do believe Home Dude has some part to play in it as well. Like I said, it could be in both of them. I don't know. We'll ultimately have to wait to see how this all shakes out next episode, what Charles' situation is. I mean, like I said, the cops are rolling up, so he's pretty banged up because he was fairly close enough to the explosion, but at the end of the day, like, Is he going to be able to get up and get away? Or like I said, is his mom going to have to call in a lawyer to kind of get him out of the mess? Because it's like he's probably going to be blamed for it because he's the only person that walked away from the whole massacre at the Korean spa. So we'll have to wait to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.